Assalamualaikum and hi. So for today, we will do our class by online session. What do I want all of you to do is basically just focus on this 10 minutes video for chapter 3. Then during intersession, there will be quizzes that you have to answer, and then your weekly for ISM for this week is finished. So for today, I would like to cover on topic 3, which stands for chemical hazards. So here are some of the topic outcomes, whereby at the end of this learning, students should be able to summarize. First is the basic toxicology, and the second one is the occupational health and standards. Now, we have three terms that we will discuss on the definitions for today's chemical hazards. Basically, the first is hazard, second itself is risk, and the third is the exposure. Whereby the definitions of hazard refers to the inherent properties of a chemical substances that make it capable of causing harm to a person or the environment. Next is risk. Is the possibility of a harm arising from a particular exposure to a chemical substances under specific conditions. And the third one is the exposure. Exposure describes both the amount of and the frequency with which a chemical substance comes into contact with a person, group of people, or the environment. Here's an example of most people can relate to. Just imagine in front or in UMPSA Gambang, in front of the main gate, whereby you are crossing the streets, you may be hit by hazards of getting hit by a passing car. But that is only the hazard which is the capable of causing harm, just capable. But risk is the likelihood of harm actually occurring, whereby there may be no risk of getting hit by a car while crossing an empty street such as on weekends. But somehow if you are actually crossing the streets on Monday, Tuesday, peak hours, yes, your risk is getting higher. So to understand risk, we need to know both what the inherent hazard is getting hit by a car or the degree of exposure. How many car will be hit you? So this is the three definition that you might be understand. Hazard, risk, and exposure. Now, here are the chemical hazards that we will go into deep caused by exposure to a chemical at workplace. So, when we are talking about chemical hazards, here are some of the story that has been occurred, whereby what happened on 2018, there is a paperback bookmaking facility experienced a release of hazardous materials that sickened 10 workers and forced the evacuation of 400 more from the Luzerne country, Pennsylvania state. And another story whereby it occurs in Mexico. They are one of the largest copper mines in the northern state of Sonora. There were 10 millions of gallons of sulfuric acid which leaked out of holding tanks and contaminated two rivers and leaving them orange and toxic and stranding thousands of people and farmers without water. And the Wall Street Journal reports the Mexican government plans to file criminal charges against the top mine officials, in addition to other fines and cleanup costs. That is what is the side effect of the chemical hazard is that it's only not affect the environment health and all the health of the person, it also could be fine towards the person that occurred it. Then in the cerebral accident, the physical effects of the possible itself literally spread downstream over 35 miles, changing many who have no relationship with the mine itself. Now, what occurs in Malaysia? Malaysia, do you ever hear that every year there will be some of the water pollution, river pollution, and most of it occurred in Sungai Selangor? Because in nearby Sungai Selangor, there are lots of factories and they were polluted again and again. And then onto 2020, for water treatment plants are closed due to river pollution. For the chemical hazard may cause acute and long-term detrimental health effect. Remember, acute means a rapid effect as a result of short-term exposure of a short duration. Meanwhile, for chronic effects as a result of long-term exposure and of a long duration. Whereby some chemicals can cause both acute and also chronic effect, such as alcohol. Whereby if you just consume it, small doses can cause a loss of coordination, but or impact judgment. But prolonged exposure can cause liver problem. So you should not take alcohol too much because that is the consequences. Now, so how can the chemical hazards might affect towards women, whereby it can affect through skin, ingestion, inhalation, and also eye. Okay, just imagine that eventually in your lab, you are actually exposing towards chemical without you wearing your gloves. What can be occurred? So here are the primary touching the chemicals which cause skin absorption, can cause itching, redness, burn, blisters, and also rash. Meanwhile, for ingestion usually comes in when food poisoning or even chemical poisoning inside our food can cause abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, a warm sensation in the stomach, and dark-colored urine, and also dehydration. Meanwhile, for inhalations of any types of chemicals that are very chemical hazards can cause you drowsiness, dizziness, headache, confusion, clear drainage of nose, cough, dry, blurred vision, shortness of breath, and rapid breathing, and also rapid heart rate. And lastly is the eye contact, which is the redness of the eye, burning sensation, constant tear production, and mucus discharge from tear ducts. Here are some of our target organs that can cause from the chemical hazard itself. Why the first is the hepatotoxins, liver damage. Then we got nephrotoxins, kidney damage, neurotoxin, a nervous system effect, agents which act on the blood or hematopoietic system, deprive body tissues of oxygen, and agents which damage the lungs. Now we got 5 types of chemical hazard that we'll focus on, which is the first is carcinogen, second is the corrosive, third is irritant, fourth is fire, and 5 is the explosion. Okay, now basically in our lab, what are we actually see in all of our laboratory? So there are lots of posters, there are lots of SDS, there are lots of precautions. So to ensure chemical safety at workplace, information about the identities and hazards of the chemical must be made available and understandable to workers. So basically, if you have a poster that writes it not in your language, could you understand what is told about? Such as if you can see the handle with care, and this handle with care statement is not in English or in Malay, and you might see that it is a diamond or it doesn't state anything. Okay, next is the chemical manufacturers and importers are required to evaluate the hazard of the chemicals that they produce, prepare labels and safety data sheet to convey the information to their customers. So basically, every chemicals that has been submitted to our lab or any chemicals that we want to board must have SDS, safety data sheet, because it is important so that we know the resources, what is it made of, such as inside your food, you've got nutritional value. So here are the SDS for chemicals. Next is all employers must make the labels and SDS to be available at the workplace and train the employees to handle chemicals properly. And the Hazard Communication Standard HCS component is basically contains of hazard classification, labels, safety data sheets, and information and training. Now, here are some of the example of one of the safety data sheet that has been presented if we actually bought benzene. So benzene, what do you got inside a safety data sheet? It is basically the identification and hazard identification first. Whereby in the identification itself, it will show you the names, date of this SDS has been created, product descriptions, and name of the supplier, and also the emergency contact. So basically all the SDS must comes with all the chemicals so that we can know if there are If there are actually any emergency, we can just contact the numbers given. Meanwhile, for the hazard identification, it's basically the chemicals that hazard that we must know, whereby it told you the hazard category inside all the hazard classes, such as flammable liquid is only 2 and it's not severe. Meanwhile, for there's got acute toxicity, skin corrosion, serious eye, germ cell mutagenicity, toxic and carcinogenicity.
So basically, here are the hazard classification, whereby it shows you different type of classes and also the classifications of dangerous goods and substances.
So here, as you can see, if you got hazardous materials play card, class 1 for explosive, they've got number 1, 1.5, 1.6 that determines out the dangerousness, and its classes has this been divided by subcategory of flammability, explosivity. Now the class 2 is actually flammable gases, non-flammable gases, inhalation hazards, and also oxygen. So for number 2, basically it usually stated our skulls, and also it stated number 2. And it could be inhalation, flammable, oxygen, and also non-flammable gas. Now for class 3, we've got flammable, all are in the same design, just different types of flammable, fuel oil, gasoline, combustible, or flammable. For class 4, we've got flammable solids, which is stated on number 4. We've got dangerous when wet and spontaneous combustible. Meanwhile, for class 5 is oxidizers and organic peroxide. We've got subcluster 5.1 and 5.2 for organic peroxides and oxidizers. Meanwhile, for class 6, also actually the same as class 2 flammable, where it's stated on poisons and inhalation hazards. It's got skulls and number 6. Then we've got class 7, radioactive materials. For somehow, the design for radioactive is just the same. Same for class 8, corrosive. But previously the corrosive is actually number 7, so now it becomes class 8. Now class 9 is miscellaneous hazardous materials.
After I have told about the 9 classes of these hazard materials, now for the tutorials today and the task for all of your students, you must make a chart or a table or a mind map sketch for all the 9 classes of hazards in an A4 paper, which you must draw or handwritten the symbol, state its class, give 2 examples of chemical in each class. Then you write your name, program and date for today and submit this task by today before 9 p.m. How do you want to submit? After you have already drawn and sketched on your A4 paper, either you scan it out or even you take picture, then you just submit. Then I will take your attendance by the tutorial for today. Okay, so we will meet soon by next week on Wednesday at the same time, same place, and make sure you do your tutorial for today, and maybe there are some gift for those who are actually excellent in hand sketching. And make sure that we will undergo subtopic 3.3, which is the occupational safety and health, in next week, and next week's got have quiz too. Bye.